Hello and a very good afternoon to Madam and also to everyone else who is listening to this. Today our group will be talking about a topic that we are all pretty excited to tell since for our podcast we decided to do a bit of a story time session. So the topic of our story time is scary stories that we either heard or personally experienced. But before we start, let's introduce ourselves. I am Farah.
Hello, madam. My name is Pravina.
Hi, madam. My name is Kirtana.
Hi, madam. I am Darshni.
Hi, madam. My name is Hannah.
Okay, so now that we have introduced ourselves, who would like to start first?
I'll go first. Okay. So this is one of a story that my grandmother had shared to me. So here is the story about my grandpa. There isn't a single scene in which I appear because the incident happened before I was born. It was late night and my grandfather had just finished his work and returned home. He heard something that sounded like a person shouting his name before he entered the home. So when he heard it, he quickly turned around to see who was there, but there was no one. He assumed it was just like a hallucination or something since he was so exhausted with his work. So he returned to house, had bath, ate his food and went to bed directly. And the next day, the same incident happened, but this time it was a bit scarier. So he was driving home on the highway after finishing his work when he noticed a woman on the road begging for a ride to go home. So he came and asked the woman, as if it was already late, what she was doing there. The woman then stated she was waiting for a bit long for the lift to go home, but nobody able to assist her. So my grandfather decided to send her home. And then he asked her to get in the car, and he sensed something fell down. So he went down to check. He just go down and check, but there was nothing. When he get up, there was no one on the road, and he was surprised. Like the woman was just standing here, suddenly just poof, just disappeared like that. After that, he continued his journey. After a few minutes, he noticed the same woman asking for a lift again, right in front of him on the road. Then he asked the woman, when he stopped the car directly beside her, then he asked the woman, where did you go? Then the woman just answered my grandfather's question, and she said, you check down to see whether something has been dropped, right? Then my grandfather said, yeah. And then she said, so do I, which sounds a bit creepy. Then he was so confused at that time. He didn't think about what's truly she's saying. Then she gets in the car, and suddenly the car radio, which has been broken for literally few months, suddenly starts playing my grandfather's favorite song. He was so thrilled by that because few months didn't work. How come suddenly it just popped out some random music which my grandfather likes? And then he knows something is not really okay happening surrounding him. So when my grandfather checked his back mirror to reverse the car, he discovered that the woman in the car had gone. Then he understood it wasn't just a lady but something much more scarier. So he called his brother, who is greatly interested in religious prayers, to his house to make some prayers and provide some protection religious chain to keep away bad spirit. Yeah. So this is my story. So who's next?
Okay, so I would like to start next, but before I start, I like the radio part.
It's like just suddenly came out some random song.
Yeah, that is cool. Okay, so for my story, it was from my mother's personal experience. So at that time, she was 8 years old, and her grandmother, which is my great grandmother, late great grandmother, so passed away from cervical cancer. So skip forward 2 3 days later, after my late great grandmother passed away. It was a Thursday night, and my mother was alone with my uncle, her older brother. So because that time my late grandfather and the rest of the family was out going to an event of some sort that my mother forgot, and she didn't tell me, and because she didn't remember. Okay, so my mother and uncle planned to go to sleep at 11 p.m. because they were kids. Kids sleep early, usually, I think so. Okay, so but that night the temperature was hot, and so they couldn't sleep because it is not comfortable. Okay, understandable. Okay, so then came midnight. They suddenly heard the sound of someone crying, like sadly, like the scary type of crying that
Yeah.
came in the
Understandable.
movies, yeah, like that. So so they were terrified because what's more scary to them was because they were lying in front of the front door of the house. So the thing was exactly outside of the door. Okay, so um that night they were suddenly like want to go to sleep really quickly, like, okay, we gotta go to sleep. We cannot do this anymore. There's no waking up. We gotta sleep. Okay, so they sleep. I mean, they don't sleep first. They play tug of war first with their blanket, like, you know, I want this
Yeah.
blanket.
I take this, I take that.
The blanket. I'm more important. Okay, so and then to drown out the noise of the crying outside. So yeah, eventually they fell asleep. So a few days later, their neighbor talked to my late grandfather about it, and he said that the day my mother and my uncle saw the woman, he had saw a woman in front of the house, like standing with long hair and was crying also, crying. So but he couldn't see her face. That time he was walking back home from work, and so he was just passing by, and when he saw the woman, he was like, okay, this is not the woman, I can go. So he just left, and yeah, that is all. So
Kind of scary. I don't know now what I will do.
yeah. Okay, so next.
Can I?
Sure.
Guys, I have read a scary story last night. Let me share to you all. Okay. This story is about a girl who moved to a new house after having a run-in with a storekeeper and was pretty much by it. And she always felt like her eyes watching her even though he was arrested. She moved to the countryside, and the house was big but cheap. Her owner told her that a serial killer once lived there. But the owner also and her neighbor told her not to worry, because since there were for other people who lived there before and they were happy. So she also loved to live there. Until a week living there, she felt like someone is watching her again and started discovering the story of the serial killer in that house before that. And then she found out who used the story killer to have a hard time sleeping unless someone is watching. So he put a scarecrow to watch him sleep, and later one was arrested because the scarecrow was actually a teen girl he murdered brutally. So one day she was cooking when she still feel Ice is watching her creepily. She turned around immediately and threw a knife in the wall. She seemed like Ice is watching her from behind her. She immediately called her to the police. As they tore down the walls, she discovered there were hundreds of eyeballs buried in that wall. So this story was happening. If happening to me, I will automatically run away from that house. But the girl is handling that kind of situation. So yeah, thank you. Next.
Originally,
I
it's
think
too
the
extreme.
eyeballs you can.
Eyeball.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Too extreme.
Decoration.
Oh my goodness.
Halloween, you don't need to buy decoration. You already have the decoration.
Okay, next.
Can I? Guys, I have listened a scary story from my cousin. So I think the story will be interesting. So do not scared. Let I share the story, and this story is not very scared. The story is about a girl who is at home alone while a family have gone to visit grandparents, and she is having a final exam. So she decide to stay at home alone. Right as the clock struck 12, the girl realized the Wi-Fi has been disconnected since it was raining and thundering. He also ran quickly to her room after shut off a computer. Not long after, her home had a blackout. He was one to use a phone flashlight, but right after he turned it on, she saw a shadow wearing white, but realized it was just a uniform. He played with a phone to distract herself from being scared, but then her phone died out of the low battery. Then the door bell ring, ding dong. But when he checked the door, no one was there and became more scared. While walking back into her room, he felt a cool hand touching her, and when she turned, he saw a girl with blood eyes. Then he felt fearful. When he woke up, her parents were there and she told them everything. They went to a clinic and the doctor said he may be too stressed about his studies, so he have hallucinations. This is about my story, and it's not too scary, but this is my story. Okay.
Seriously though, I hate blackouts.
Yeah.
Like, someone time raining, raining time.
Especially when you are alone at home
And at night.
and then everything hayo.
Just imagine though. You just imagine. Wi-Fi don't have. House
Yeah.
blackout. What?
No
I
family.
sit outside of the house.
Panic. Okay. I think last is Hannah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Hannah, let's
Okay.
go.
I'm gonna be the last one. So I have never seen or experienced something horror or creepy myself, but I heard a story from my mother about our old house. I think I never experienced it because I am not a very sensitive person.
That's it.
So I am not really aware when something mystic happened. So before moving to my current house, we used to live in Kempas. So basically I live in a one-story terrace house, and my mother has faced multiple horror experience. I heard story from my neighbor and friends about the horror experience they face in the neighborhood, but I ignored it because it never happened to me. So the story today I will tell you about is when my mother and brother experienced. There was one time that my mother heard somebody call her name while she was alone at home. So the story is when she was busy cooking in the kitchen, suddenly she felt like somebody walking behind her, like a black a black and tall I don't know how to describe it, but it was black and tall and she looked and nobody was there because obviously all of my family members are at school or at work. My mother continued cooking and doing all the house chores and completely ignored it. Suddenly, she clearly heard somebody calling her Ibu, which is what we call our mother. She was so shocked and scared when because the voice was so clear. She decided to get ready quickly and get to my grandparents' house, which thankfully very near. Those experiences also happened to my brother while he was doing his work on the computer in his room. My brother was focusing on doing all his assignment alone in his room, and suddenly he heard someone call his name like Man. But only a family member called my brother with that name. So that's all the horror story that I will tell you guys today. So yeah.
Have you checked your house? Like, is there a missing family member?
Only the family member call your brother like that, right? And then something is suspicious right there.
Thankfully, I already moved out, you know.
Okay, thank God.
Okay, so that's all right. That is all, madam. I think we had a fun time doing this. And maybe we should do more after this. Who knows? Okay, so that is all. Thank you, madam, and have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you, madam. Have a nice
Thank you,
day.
madam.
Thank you, madam.